Hey there. Contest of Words is a memoir by Ben Lerner, a Jewish academic who contrasts his experience as a high school debater, late night freestyler, and poet with the US and determined three things that were wrong with it: the loss of cultural identity, or any identity, the divorce of value and policy, and the disappearance of quality in political discourse. Despite these modern day deficiencies, however, he believes there is still hope to restore these qualities. Before going into the article, we will begin with where Lerner comes from. He is a middle-class Jew who grew up with lefty, loving, Jewish psychologist parents in a very red state. This dichotomy in his environment and his love of written and verbal expression come out in Emily Witt's profile of him and seem to contribute to his genuine concern about how the middle class can live ethical lives. This concern is important because at the time he wrote these pieces, the rest of the world was poking fun at middle-class Americans for trying to fit their first-world problems into the context of a world full of people with much more urgent needs. The profile revealed two things: his care for ethics and his status as a fictional writer and poet. The status highlights that Lerner chose to express this piece in the form of creative nonfiction. To describe this choice, we call back to the medium's purpose: to tell the truth. By using creative nonfiction instead of other mediums he has mastered, Lerner more effectively demonstrates his own truth. Because Lerner experienced all the things he thinks are wrong with the world, his personal development and the resulting changes in tone are best shown through creative nonfiction. In Lerner's memoir, his tone crescendos from calm recollection of righteous anger, then back around to hope, which brings us along on his journey and makes his conclusion more impactful. He starts off the memoir by discussing the grind of high school speech and debate in almost heroic terms. As he continues speaking, however, he begins to describe speech and debate as cultish and useless for those who are uninitiated. He builds to a description of parties after debate and speaks about their behavior as preposterous, extreme, violent, and even appropriation of what these boys perceive to be African American culture. Finally, he ends by framing the outcome of his countrywide loss of identity and senseless violence in terms of Columbine, an event that had happened nearly 14 years earlier. This framing highlights for us the indignation that he feels. Columbine was the most deadly school shooting of its time, and the country remained relatively unchanged. For those that suffered and those who had kids in schools across the country, this lack of change was outrageous and bringing up our own outrage. At this point in the memoir, I had to begin checking my own interpretive lens and comparing it to his. His arguments begin moving in a very anti-right direction, and he targets the ignorance of Bush, talks about Fox Newsification of language, and even compares republicanism to experimental poetry. As I was raised in a very conservative and semi-Baptist tradition, I found this semi-attacking. Although I've moved out of this interpretive community since, when someone begins making blanket statements about the right, I can't help but feel a twinge of defensiveness for the wonderful people I still know who follow these beliefs. In this way, Lerner's more liberal Jewish interpretive lens gets in the way of his message, because by moving from memoir to barely qualified attack of the right, he alienates the audience he seems to believe should hear his message most. After rereading the article and reframing his criticisms of the right as impersonal and beneficial to a community I once identified strongly with, I was able to see how elegant his potential solution was. Instead of working against each other to make sure we got in the last word or that the other person ceded the most points, that we could together make the discourse. This solution was inspired for him by the human microphone, where everyone works together to amplify the speaker, and although the speech becomes awkward and halting, it also becomes more powerful, and each person must consider, then agree with each point before accepting or rejecting an idea based on its identity.